Europe's energy map is undergoing a rapid transformation, but not in the way the architects of the green transition had envisioned. Today, the old continent finds itself trapped in its own illusions, having placed its bets on political slogans instead of calculated geo-economic planning. And once again, Russian gas takes center stage. What Europe publicly renounced 3 years ago is now being quietly discussed in back rooms as perhaps the only viable means of avoiding an industrial collapse. This is not so much a reversal as it is a slow and painful return to reality. Let's start with the obvious. 3 years ago, the European Union decided to abandon Russian energy resources, planning to replace them with liquefied natural gas from the United States, deliveries from Qatar, Norway, and even from unstable North Africa. The concept was elegant: to achieve energy independence, demonstrate political resolve, and simultaneously accelerate the green economic transition. But as so often happens in history, noble intentions crashed against harsh reality. The infrastructure proved unprepared, alternative suppliers unreliable, and Europe's energy system more vulnerable than ever. The symbol of this failure became the fate of the Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2 pipelines. After the explosions on the lines in 2022, the projects were practically erased from political discourse. Yet just 2 years later, they are once again being discussed, albeit unofficially, at the highest levels. The financial and industrial pressures facing EU countries make the idea of resuming gas supplies from Russia not merely reasonable, but a matter of economic survival. Germany's industry, long considered the engine of Europe's economy, is choking on high energy tariffs. The price of American liquefied gas is 2 to 3 times higher than that of pre-war Russian gas. Under such conditions, the production of ammonia, aluminum, and steel becomes simply unprofitable. Companies like BASF, Siemens, and ThyssenKrupp have begun relocating factories to the United States and China. Germany alone has lost over 60,000 industrial jobs in 1 year. France and Italy are showing similar figures. Against this backdrop, a statement from the executive vice president of a French energy corporation calling for a return to importing 60 to 70 billion cubic meters of Russian gas annually sounded like a signal, not only economic but also political. His voice is not an isolated outcry, but a harbinger of a systemic shift. Europe may not be ready to admit defeat publicly, but de facto it is already seeking ways to restore energy cooperation with Russia. However, it's not that simple. The Kremlin, fully aware of the changed balance of power, has set clear conditions: the lifting of sanctions and the return of frozen foreign exchange reserves. These demands may sound like an ultimatum, but in reality they are a part of a negotiation, tough, pragmatic, but not final. Moscow is no longer in the position of a petitioner. It is a supplier with leverage. Russia is building a parallel distribution network: China, India, Turkey, Southeast Asia. Europe is no longer its primary market, but it remains a valuable partner, provided it is willing to pay not only in money, but in political flexibility. Europe itself is now torn between ideology and economics. Poland, the Baltic states, and part of Scandinavia continue to insist on a complete break with Moscow. However, Hungary, Slovakia, Austria, and partly the Czech Republic take the opposite stance. They continue receiving gas via the Turk Stream pipeline, block new anti-Russian initiatives, and openly express dissatisfaction with Brussels' course. Their arguments are straightforward. More than 80% of Hungary's gas comes from Russia. Abandoning it would mean freezing the economy. Business no longer whispers in corridors. It speaks openly. Without stable, cheap, and predictable energy supplies, European industry is doomed. The United States sells LNG at market rates. If Asia pays more, tankers go there. There's no allied loyalty, only profit. In 2023, Europe received nearly a third less than the promised volume of US gas. The tankers went to China and South Korea. What was left for Europe? Coal, fuel oil, and soaring electricity prices. The situation is further exacerbated by the fact that, amid rising prices and energy shortages, the United States is actively luring European manufacturers. Over 100 companies moved factories to Texas, Kentucky, Louisiana within a year. There, cheap energy, tax incentives, and infrastructure support. Europe is losing not just fuel, but also technology, jobs, and investment. capital outflow is accelerating. Over 30% of industrial investments in 2023 left the EU. Meanwhile, Europe's political elite continues to repeat mantras about independence, solidarity, and values. But ordinary citizens, staring at their heating bills, hear in these statements only echoes of detachment from reality. The closer the next winter approaches, the louder the voice of the skeptics becomes. Internal European Commission documents, according to sources, reflect rising anxiety. By spring 2026, the EU could face not only a resource crisis, but also a wave of social unrest. Approval ratings of ruling parties are falling. Eastern and Western Europe once again diverge in goals and priorities. Brussels is losing control. Against this backdrop, the revival of discussions around Nord Stream 2 looks less like a sensation and more like a logical outcome. The project that was ceremoniously abandoned in 2022 now appears to be the only real option. The infrastructure exists, the logistics are clear, and the volumes are sufficient. And most importantly, no alternative of comparable scale has emerged. Neither Qatar nor Algeria nor the United States can fully replace Russia. This shift does not mean Europe is surrendering. It means that after 3 years of experimenting with expensive LNG, unstable deliveries, industrial decline, and social turbulence, common sense is beginning to take hold once again. This is not capitulation. This is the realization that energy policy is not about slogans. It's about heat in homes, lights in factories, and the price of exported goods. In the coming months, we can expect a series of new steps. They will be presented as strategic adaptations, flexible approaches, or innovative solutions. But in reality, it will be exactly what the Kremlin has long sought: a slow return to the understanding that gas is not geopolitical blackmail. It is a basic element of economic survival. European industry cannot survive without it. And neither can the European project itself, if it loses the ability to produce, export, and compete. Gas is not about the past. It's about the future. And in that future, the word Russia reappears.